Hey, today I want to talk a little bit about an air compressor I just purchased from Northern Tool. I had an old, no, actually it wasn't that old, I had a DeWalt air compressor which I'd used for filling up tires and running some tools and things, and it gave up the ghost after less than a dozen uses. Not very impressed with it. I bought it at Lowe's, but I went on to Amazon.com, years after the fact to see what people were saying about it, and it's pretty much hate and disgust the whole way around. Everybody else was having problems with it too. Anyway, at this point in my life where I'd like to buy some quality tools that I can pretty much plan on lasting a long time and being there when I need them. So I figured I'd go with something like a single stage oil-based air compressor, in the under $500 range. And I'd done some looking around, and it seemed like this Northern Tool NorthStar unit was probably pretty much the best bang for the buck out there. Essentially what it is, it's a Puma, P-U-M-A is the manufacturer. They just put the NorthStar label on it. And from what I can see, it's pretty much equivalent to this P-U-M-A PK5020VP. It put a different paint job on it. You'd have the Northern Tool from what I can see. In any case, $499, $500 list price. They had it on sale for $450. And all you have to do is go out onto the Google and type in a Northern Tool coupon code, and pretty much all the time they have a coupon code you can enter and get $50 off of any purchase $250 or more. So I got the price down to $400, and of course there's no sales tax, and that includes free freight shipping right to the house, so you can't beat that. Alright, let's talk a little bit about the logistics of receiving it. Hey, the first thing I wanted to show you here is the actual shipping container that this air compressor comes in. As you can see, it's a NorthStar 20-gallon electric vertical air compressor, part item number 25653. Anyway, it does come packed horizontally just like you see it. And the dimensions on the box, just in case you want to know if it fits in your car or your van, is 45 inches long by 24 inches wide by 18 inches tall. And it weighs right around 200 pounds, so it's definitely not a one-man lift. You have basically two choices. You can have it delivered to the local store for free, and you can pick it up there. And of course, in my case, the closest store is in Virginia, an hour and a half each way, so that wasn't very practical. But they also offer free shipping on this via freight, which is a pretty nice deal. And the guy came with an 18-wheeler, and he had to pull into the cul-de-sac. And I have a small subcompact tractor with a front end loader, and I just basically put that guy right on the back of his truck, and we put it into the bucket and used a strap and strapped it in, and away we go. If you don't have a way to get it off the truck, they offer a liftgate service, which I think you have to pay like an extra $80, $90 for at the time when you order this. I imagine you could also, if you have a like my 4x4 sits pretty high, I could have probably backed that up to his 18-wheeler and just offloaded it, slid right into my pickup bed with the help of somebody else. I imagine it probably depends on the driver, and you probably really can't count on them to help you unload it. My particular case, the guy was very nice, but he's an older gentleman, so didn't want to have to see him try to lift any heavy amount of weight. Okay, let's take a look at the actual machine. Okay, here's the actual machine sitting in my shed. As you can see, it's pretty attractive. If you're one of these guys that has a really nice designer garage with top-of-the-line equipment, you shouldn't be embarrassed to have this thing there. Looks pretty good. It actually sits 44 inches high from the floor to the top of that red safety cage in the back, and it's 21.5 inches across that red safety cage, just to give you an idea. As we mentioned earlier, it's about 200 pounds. Now when you take it out of the box, there's very little assembly required. Essentially all you have to do is put those two wheels on the bottom and then attach the handle, and then also the two air filters on the two separate cylinders. So it's pretty quick, and you also have to put oil into it. We'll talk about that a little bit later here. Just take a look at this a little bit closer up. The finish is kind of interesting. I guess it's a crinkle kind of finish. It's not a smooth, glossy finish, so it's pretty attractive. Now, I guess if you're in a dusty environment, this crinkle finish is probably going to attract and hold the dust a little bit more, so that's one thing to consider. One thing I really liked about this unit is it comes with two flat free tires. if you've ever dealt with a lot of small equipment like I have, these small utility tires, wheels, 10 inches, they typically don't hold air very well. And you're always either replacing the tires or putting inner tubes in them, or replacing the inner tubes and or filling them up. So this is definitely a nice thing to have. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, the handle does not come installed. It's no big deal. Basically it just slides into these two channels and has a couple bolts to hold it in place. It takes about a minute to put it in there. And the other thing you have to install are these two canisters which hold your air cleaners, one for each of the pump cylinders. And it's just screws in. These are the threaded portion. It looks to be aluminum. The other big thing you have to do when you get this is put oil into the pump. And you can do that by just taking this yellow cap off here, and this is where the oil goes in. There's a big warning label that comes on here not to start the pump up before you put the oil into it. And then you have a sight glass down here, and essentially the instructions tell you that you want the oil to be within that red circle. And I put mine just to the top of the circle. Now you want to use SAE 30 non-detergent compressor oil. And my understanding is you do not want to use the SAE 30 motor oil. And it does not come with any oil whatsoever, which is kind of surprising. So I went down to Lowe's, and this is really the only place I could find any air compressor oil. And this was less than $5 for a 16 fluid ounce bottle. Now the specs say this thing takes about 17 point something ounces, but I had just a little bit left after I filled it to just about the top of that red circle. I know a lot of people are anxious. They want to put synthetic in there because they just love to use synthetic, and it's going to make things last longer. The instructions are pretty explicit about that. They say they want you to run standard non-synthetic oil for 50 hours of use. And of course, 50 hours, they must mean the time that this actual motor compressor unit is running. So this takes about 3.5–4 minutes to fill the tank up to pressure from empty. So say 4 minutes. It's going to take quite a few days, depending on your usage, to go through 50 hours of use of this. For me, it's probably going to be 2 years or so. Anyway, don't get over anxious to fill this thing with synthetic oil, at least according to the manufacturer, and one would assume they know best. And one more thing I forgot to mention as far as the setup, after you install your obligatory parts, the wheels, the air filters, and the handles, and put the oil in it, there's also a break-in process that you need to follow to break the pump in. And what they want you to do is open up that drain valve on the bottom of the tank that we showed you earlier, and also on the end of your air hose, just disconnect whatever device you have so you have air flowing out freely, and then run the pump for 30 minutes just to break it in so that it's not building up in the tank. And what I did is I just turned it on, went in the house and set the timer for 30 minutes, and came back out and turned it off. And once that's done, you can close your valves up and it's ready to use. Just looking at this from the back, you can see there's a safety cage around the flywheel, which is mounted onto the air pump, which runs over to the motor, because you don't want to get your fingers in there and lose one, or jam a tool in there and break something. One thing you probably notice is a lot of complaints is these do seem to come like they've been bent, but as long as they're not touching that pulley, they should be alright. It comes with a nice heavy power wire, although even as thick as this wire is, the specifications on the jacket say it's just a 14 gauge wire. Also comes with the regulator built in, so you can regulate the pressure from your tank out to your tool. It has an AC switch here, so you can turn it off. And then down here is the pressure on your tank. And I'm pretty impressed with this. It's been sitting at 125 pounds of pressure, PSI, for about 3 days now, and doesn't seem to have lost anything. I've got the regulator set down to 0, so there's very little to no leak on this whatsoever. The circuit breaker for the motor is over here. According to the specs, this will draw a peak or a maximum of 15 amps during startup. It apparently has some sort of valve technology so it'll reduce the startup load So I imagine that when it first starts up, the air is probably venting to the environment instead of being pushed right into the tank. That way the motor can come up to speed. And then I imagine this valve flips over and the air starts pumping into the tank itself. That's a nice little feature which during cold weather should make it easier to start and not draw too many amps and blow your circuit breaker. Each cylinder has its own air cleaner, and the air cleaner canister just is fastened with this wing nut. And you can pop that off, and there's a replaceable cartridge air filter. I saw that Northern was offering a starter kit which basically gave you 2 of those filters and a quart of synthetic oil for about $70. Seems a little bit steep. However, they supposedly extended the warranty of this machine by another year. There was some small print on that if you bought that starter kit at the time of purchase. I don't know if that's worth it for me. And as far as the warranty, if this is going to be used for personal residential use, they offer a very nice 4-year warranty. I believe if it's a commercial use, like you're going to be in a professional shop, it's going to be a 2-year warranty. And just to note that the air compressor does already come with a quick release fitting on here. So you need to go out and have to buy that extra. Of course, it does not come with any air hoses. That's up to you. And down here we can see there's the drain plug to drain the oil out of the pump. I haven't read up yet. I'm not really sure what the frequency is they recommend the oil changes are. Here's one thing that's really nice about this unit too, is it can run on either 115 or it can be rewired for 230 volts. Indicates this on the motor tag here. And of course, if you're running at 115 volts, you'll be pulling 15 amps max, or 230 you'll be pulling half of that, 7.5 amps. So that's a nice little feature to have. And way down here at the bottom is our mandatory tank drain valve. And you're going to want to drain this periodically, some people say every day, to get the moisture out of there. Otherwise you're going to get some rusting on the inside of the tank, and I guess inevitably you could have a tank rupture, which probably wouldn't be a pleasant thing to be around if it had a lot of pressure in there. Another interesting thing to note here is that these output air lines coming from the 2 cylinders, the 1 cylinder daisy chains to the 2nd cylinder, and then this goes down and goes into the tank. But anyway, you notice that the copper pipe is finned, and that's to allow more surface area, so it will cool the pipe down before the air gets into the tank. Of course, as this pump uses energy to compress the air, energy is going to turn into heat, and then if the heat goes into the tank and cools off in the tank, it's going to be a lot of condensation. So I guess the theory here is that you'll cool the air before it makes it back to the tank, and you'll have a lot less condensation in your tank. One of the great things about these single stage oil-based pumps is that they're a lot quieter than those little inexpensive ones that you typically pick up for Lowe's for between $100 and $200. They use a small motor with probably a diaphragm pump, and just probably what it sounds like when the world's going to come to an end. Those things are just hellaciously nasty sounding and noisy, and it sounds like your brain is rattling when they finally do stop. This is quite a bit quieter. It's not super quiet. Some people might exaggerate how quiet it is, but we'll go ahead and let this thing run. It's kind of hard to tell in a video, but at least give you an idea. It's got about 125 psi in there right now, so I have to drain this down. I'm not sure what the cut-in is. It's around 100 psi to cut in. And cut off at about 130 psi, but you can see it's quite a bit less offensive one than those so-called oilless diaphragm-based air compressors. Overall, I am pretty pleased with it. Pleased with the price, pleased with the appearance, pleased with the performance. Very happy having a 4-year warranty. Very happy with having the free freight delivery to the house. And so far, so good. If I have any problems with it, I'll do a new video and let you know. Hey, before we jump off, why don't we take a few minutes here to take a look at some of the competition for this unit I just purchased. If we go back to the Northern Tools site for this category of air compressor, the 2 to 9 CFMs, we'll see the number 1 seller is the one I purchased here. The number 2 seller is the Ingersoll Rand Garage Mate. Just taking a quick look at the two, it looks almost like the NorthStar is a clone of the Ingersoll Rand. Of course, the NorthStar is manufactured by Puma. The specifications are very similar. They're both 20 gallons, 2 horsepower. The NorthStar has a little bit better CFM 5.5 versus 5.2 on the Ingersoll Rand. And the other big difference is the price. The Ingersoll Rand is going for about $100 more. So we then take a closer look. A few things I didn't like about the Ingersoll Rand compared to the NorthStar. For one, is it says the tires on this are pneumatic, which means that you have to put air in them, which means that they're susceptible to leaking air and going flat. And at this point, I am pretty much fed up with always having flat tires every time I want to use a tool. The NorthStar comes with flat free tires, which is a big plus in my book. Another thing that took away from the Ingersoll Rand unit is they're only offering a 12-month warranty on both the parts and the labor, whereas we're getting a 4-year with the NorthStar, so that's a big difference, a big bonus for me there as well. And the third issue was rather small, but nonetheless important. If we look at the key specs, it seems that the max amps draw on the Ingersoll Rand is 16 versus the 15 on the NorthStar. And it just seems like having 15 is just one less possibility I'm going to blow a circuit breaker. And being outside, if I blow a breaker, I'm just going to run into the house and run down to the basement to reset that. So, given those 3 things, actually 4 things considering the price, I just really thought the NorthStar was a better fit. Now finally, if you're watching my videos, you're probably also a fan / customer of Harbor Freight. So let's take a look and see what it is that they have to offer. Their unit is very similar with one key exception. The tank is 29 gallons versus 20 on the other two. They're all 3 offering 2 horsepower motors, 150 psi capacity, and all 3 have cast iron sleeves on the air pumps. We see that the Harbor Freight is just a little bit less expensive, $360, $40, not much of a difference there. But really the key item here for me was this warranty. The warranty offered by Harbor Freight is a mere 90 days, versus that 4-year again on the NorthStar. And given the reputation of these Chinese-made products, sold by Harbor Freight, and the complexity of this air compressor with all the moving parts, the pump, the cylinders, the electric motor, I'm not really comfortable with, going with a 90-day warranty just to save $40. So it really seems that, all things being equal, that the NorthStar really is the best bang for my dollar.